Vas here from Aussie RC Playground, and welcome to my review of the HPI Bullet MT. Now this is a 1/10 scale 4-wheel drive brushless monster truck that is available as a ready to run. The truck comes equipped with 8 oil-filled shocks in all 4 corners. It has a waterproof rebranded Hobbywing brushless system, and even the steering servo up the front is waterproof. Alright, so here we are finally for my review of the HPI Bullet MT, and I'm actually going to start at the end here, and I'm going to tell you that I really like this truck. I'm actually a big fan of it. I think there's a lot of good things here, but there are a couple of things that really let it down, and I'll be running through those with you very, very soon during this review. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the electrics. Now for the electrics, I've actually given this one a 5 out of 5, and the reason being, well, we're going to start here with the remote. This is the remote that comes equipped with the truck, and I have to say this is one of the better ready-to-run remotes that are out there. You got steering and throttle and point adjustments. You got steering dual rates, reverse switches are up the front here. Runs on 4 AA's, which of course HPI do include in the box, which is fantastic to see. Love the ergonomics of the remote, where you have sort of like a drop-down wheel that kind of wraps around your thumb here. The wheel feels very nice. Collapsible antenna up the front, and I know that these guys have been around for quite some time, but I certainly hope that HPI don't, if they do change remotes, they don't lose the features of it, because the features, I think, is one of the great things about this particular unit. I certainly hope that they hold on to this one for a little while longer, because it's definitely one of the good ones out there. Another reason why I've given this one a 5 out of 5 is because of your ESC, your motor, and your steering servo. All the electronics in here are in fact waterproof, which is great to see. The motor and ESC are actually rebranded Hobbywing system, which works fantastic. The KV on the motor is a little bit high. It's on the 4,000 KV mark. So it is a little bit higher than normal. I would have preferred something a little bit of a lower KV, just to have a bit more torque. But that being said, the truck doesn't weigh very much, and the motor does pull it along quite well. But of course you have to keep your gearing quite low, just to keep temperatures at bay, of course. Aside from that, there's really not a lot that I can knock on the electrics. Speed was good, especially on 3S. The truck really wakes up on 3S with a 4,000 kV motor in here. So yeah, I think it's very well deserving to get a 5 out of 5 on this one. I know that the older versions of the Bullet MTs had some heat issues with the electrics, but since HPI have upgraded to this Hobbywing system, things have been very, very good. And as I said, I really don't have any complaints. So moving on to Drivetrain, for this one, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, only because my spur gear got chewed up. They use like a plastic kind of nylon spur gear, and I think on my first or second run with the truck, it just broke and kind of got chewed up pretty badly. So that kind of lets it down a little bit there. Now, I know that it's not a one-off. I know that there are other Bullet owners out there that have commented and said that their spur gears also failed, after a short while. And it's one of those things where you just have to keep on top of it, make sure that it stays fairly clean, and try not to get too deep into the dirt. But it's an off-road monster truck. It is going to get dirty. You are going to get debris in there. It would be nice if, of course, they supplied either a better quality spur gear or maybe a cover, just so to prevent debris from getting in there and chewing up your teeth. So moving on to handling. Now for this one, I'm also going to give it a 4 out of 5, because to be quite honest, the truck actually handles very, very well. We'll start with the tires. The tires are actually fantastic. These are actually one of the better ready-to-run tires that I've seen on an RC. They grip very well, whether you're on a hard surface like a road, or whether you're on grass, gravel, or any terrain like that. I really didn't have too many issues with grip. They have these little knobbies, but in between the knobbies, it's all bridged and it looks like a bit of a maze. And they grip very well on grass, but then when you go onto gravel, the little maze sections kind of dig into the gravel a little more, they dig into the dirt, and you get really good grip. So that part of it, fantastic. The other thing I like about the truck is obviously that it has a aluminium chassis, which means it's a flat pan chassis, giving you a very low center of gravity and allowing you to kind of glide over a lot of the bumps that you'll find out there when you're out there running your RC. So it handles very, very well. Suspension is done by 8 oil-filled shocks in all 4 corners, and I am going to knock it for that. This is old tech. 8 shocks is kind of old tech. I would have preferred HPI to kind of move away from the 8-shock setup It costs a lot more to kind of fill them up with oil because you've got 8 shocks to fill up as opposed to 4. But overall, the shocks actually didn't do a bad job. What I would like to see is perhaps some sway bars pre-installed on the truck, because this platform is based on the Bullet ST, which I believe is the stadium truck. So being a stadium truck, it has that kind of race-inspired look to it, and it would have been nice to have this chassis with some sway bars on here. Also some additional adjustment points on the shock towers, just so that you can change the geometry of your shocks, have a bit of a play around with the suspension setup until you get it to where you like. There are only a couple of adjustment points on the A-arms for your shocks, but that's really about all the options you have. So overall, it handles really well. The tires are fantastic. I just wish that they would have given us a little bit more tuning options, and obviously provided some sway bars for this guy. That's why I've given this one a 4 out of 5. So moving on to durability, and this is where the truck kind of falls down a little bit. The durability on these trucks, and I know this from not just myself, but also from a lot of other Bullet MT and ST owners, that these trucks are actually a little bit fragile. As I mentioned earlier, my spur gear did get chewed up, which of course forms part of the durability process and the score. But my front steering knuckles also got a bit of a crack in them. Also broke one of the A-arms, and the body posts are starting to look a little bit worse for wear, especially the rear ones. They're kind of bent forward now, which I don't think they were originally. Plastic body chocks, also a little bit of a worry. Didn't have any of them fail. That didn't really contribute, but just something to keep in mind. What did fail on me was actually one of the posts here for the battery box kind of fell off or broke off. I don't even know how it happened, to be honest with you. The battery box has 6 body pins to hold it all in place, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. But I had that kind of break off. I would advise HPI to kind of look at the way that the A-arms wrap around the hinge pins both on the front and rear, because you've got a fairly wide plastic A-arm, but there's only a couple of little bits of plastic that actually go over the hinge pins themselves, and there's quite a large portion of the hinge pin exposed, which doesn't need to be, making it slightly, adding a little bit more plastic there on the A-arms would definitely give this a little bit more durability and allow the end user to be a little bit rougher with the car, or not to have to worry if things go wrong, that they're going to be up for money to spend on parts. So that's why this one gets a 2 out of 5. It is a fairly fragile truck. Just keep that in mind, because you are going to be breaking a few things here and there if you do decide to beat up on it quite heavily. Now moving on to maintenance, and whilst I've got the body off, I will show you here the battery tray. This is one of the things that I hate the most about this truck. I am still going to give it a 4 out of 5 because, overall, you remove the body, you've got access to pretty much everything that you want. There's really nothing here that's outside the norm except for the battery tray. This guy here really needs to be redesigned. This is a terrible, terrible design for a battery tray. It really limits the options of batteries that you can put in here. There are 6 body pins holding this thing in place, which is completely unnecessary. For the most part, I was only running 2 body pins, and the battery tray lid held in place perfectly fine. There is no need to have 6 body pins here. It just takes forever, and they're really hard to put on as well. A folding lid would have been sufficient, and just enough to have the plug. Rather than forcing the plug to go inside the battery tray, I would advise HPI to have the plug coming outside of the battery tray, because folding my cables up in here and everything was an absolute nightmare. Not a big fan, so that's why this one gets a 4 out of 5. Because aside from that, everything else is very easily accessible. There's really nothing, like I said, nothing out of the ordinary. It's just this tray that is just a terrible design. So that's why it gets a 4 out of 5. Now moving on to part support, no surprises here. It's going to get a 4 out of 5. The only reason why I didn't give this one a 5 out of 5 is really because of the cost of parts. More specifically, upgraded parts are a bit of a problem for this truck. Just to get the aluminium upgrade steering knuckles for this are just ridiculously expensive. Of course, parts are available everywhere. You can get parts from local hobby shops, from online stores, eBay, you name it. You'll find parts pretty much everywhere for HPI products, unless you're in very secluded parts of the world where HPI isn't really that well known or isn't really promoted that much in that area. But where I am, and I know that in the States, for example, there's a lot of people out there that have HPI products and they don't have too many issues getting them. It's just the cost of parts and the upgrades, more specifically the upgrades, that are just ridiculously priced. It's quite expensive to upgrade something like this, which leads me to value. Now for value, I'm actually going to give this one a 3 out of 5. And well, here's the thing. I was actually going to give it a lower score because despite the fact that it handles really well, it's got a really good, it's got really good electrics in it, great tires, easy to access most of your components. Just the battery tray is a bit of a nuisance, but you can modify that. I'm sure that people have modified that to make life a lot easier, and I probably will do the same myself at some point. This is one of the cheaper 1/10 scale trucks out there. I believe it's cheaper than the Stampede and also the Viterra Helix, which is a direct competitor to this product, or these products are a direct competitor to them. So it's one of the cheaper trucks out there. For the most part, it actually handles better than the Stampede. I have no doubt there, it handles a lot better than the Stampede. It's very, very close to the Viterra, although the Viterra had terrible shocks. These shocks here actually performed a little bit better. Even durability wise, they perform better than the ones that I had on the Viterra Helix. So out of the box, with the great remote that it has, the batteries for your remote are included. You get all your manuals, and I think you've got some tools with it as well. Great value, straight out of the box, great value. The problem is its durability and the cost of upgrades that really brings the value down. Now, I've gone for the middle of the road. I've gone for a 3 out of 5, and I think that's a fair score. In all honesty, I think it's a very fair score. It's a good truck. You just can't expect it to be super durable. You can't beat up on it the same way that I did my Viterra Helix, for example. Even the Stampede, to a lesser extent, I couldn't beat up on that too hard because I'll just keep popping drive shafts every day. With this one here, it's A-arms and knuckles, which I think are a more severe and more expensive part to replace and upgrade than drive shafts, because usually drive shafts you do them once and you're done. But with this thing here, having knuckles and A-arms breaking on you all the time, if you beat up on it a bit too hard, that can create a bit of a problem and definitely a bit of an expense. So overall, for those of you playing at home, the score is a 26 out of a potential 35, which equates to 74.28%, which is about 7.5 out of 10. Now that's not bad. I think that's pretty accurate to where this truck is. As I said, some of you may score it a little bit lower than me. Some of you may score it even a little bit higher than me. I think the truck does very well. It's definitely priced very well, especially here in Australia. I think it's a lot cheaper than the Traxxas vehicles, and I think definitely cheaper than the Helix, which I think is about $550, $600, somewhere around there. Depending on where you go, you might find it cheaper somewhere else. So this guy I think is around about the 450 mark, from memory, 430, 450 from what I can remember. So very well priced. Definitely affordable, has good speed. You just can't beat up on it too much because it is a bit fragile, hence the score for the durability. But that is it for this review of the HPI Bullet MT. Please be sure to check out the video description for links to previous videos on the truck, as well as a link to my Facebook page and a link to where I got the truck from, which was a local hobby shop that actually helped me out and supplied the truck to me. That is it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will speak to you next time.